Hey guys, it's Randy Ritchie here on behalf of Premier Pro Wrestling. This is Arab Wrestlers You Should Know. Today we're going to talk about a guy who at the time went by Sheikh Hassan Husain. Don't know much about him, can't find anything on him, but I do know that at one point, at least when I faced this guy, he was the legitimate wrestling Beirut champion. That's what seems to happen over there in Arab countries anyway, is when someone is a great amateur wrestler, they end up turning pro. And that being said, they are tough as effing nails. In just a moment, you'll see what I'm talking about when I talk about Sheikh Hassan Husain. At the time, Vern was using, we're talking about the American Wrestling Association, the AWA, and Vern Gagne, some guys that were what was left of a roster that kind of meant something from Kansas City, Bob Geigel's territory, which once was great and ran every night as well. And the guys that are sticking out off the top of my head at the time were Mr. Sato. I think Sato was with New Japan, or I can't remember if it was New Japan or All Japan or Baba or Inoki. The other was Mike George. And one of these tapings, I guess it would be my first taping, Sheikh Hassan Husain came with, and talk about getting your wires crossed. Sam DeCero from Windy City Wrestling had been talking to Greg. And Greg and he got their wires crossed in a major way because Sam sent myself, a guy by the name of Thor, Frank the Tank, and Tarzan to Rochester to do an AWA taping. Now, Sam was under the impression and led all those guys to believe that they were going to go over there and get over as personalities or actual guys on the roster for the AWA, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time when someone canceled, and I was to be lucky if I even got someone to lock up with me. And I'll tell you, I was grateful for that. You know, I wanted more matches under my belt, and I knew that the more matches I had, the quicker I would get to actually being a worker or a respected wrestler or something in the industry. So to make a long story short, this was not the case whatsoever. Greg Gagne had hit up Sam for extras for television. Now, you can't fault the guys at the time because the guys were told one thing by their trainer, and I don't know where Sam even got this idea from, but at the end of the day, we were all there just to put over Vern's guys. So, back to Sheikh Hassan Husain. Like I say, a legit Beirut champion. I remember he was wearing a sweater when he took his shirt off. There was so much body hair. His English was very broken, and you could tell by looking at him. I'm talking about the size of the man's hands, the way he talked. I believe he might have been shorter than me or the same height, but he had that thickness, and he just had this real old-timey roughness about him. The way Vern taped it was he taped all his TVs for ESPN, for the month on one taping. So when you'd go work for Vern, you'd work 3 times. Well, this was my second match on the taping, and the first match that Sheikh Hassan Husain wrestled, he wrestled my friend, the Berlin Bomber, who then wrestled as Thor. At that time, he was 270 pounds and a Wisconsin State bench champion. When I watched that match, son of a bitch, let's just put it this way, Sheikh Hassan Husain was a legit Beirut champion. You could tell because after 2 minutes in there, he won by countout because my friend, who was no slouch, walked out of the match because the guy was so rough. Now, at the time, I was greener than goose shit. This is within my first 10 matches. Again, I knew how lucky I was to be there. When Hussein came up to call this match for me, I could barely understand him because the accent was so thick. and he tells me, okay, I'm a big guy. I'm not a big guy, but I'm a tough guy. And I'm going to hit you. I'm going to hit you hard. For it to be believable, you have to hit me back just as hard as I hit you. I'm green as hell, and I'm like, okay. Well, for some reason, I retained something from somewhere at that point that told me that you have to adapt to the way certain guys work. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I was still an ecstatic green guy getting ring time, especially in what was going to be on AWA television. So we go out there and we have our match, and I did whatever he told me to do, and whenever he nailed me, I hit him as hard as I could back. And it was one of those scenarios, again, where I didn't have a black eye, I didn't have a chipped tooth, I didn't have anything dislocated or broken. So fuck it. It was working rough. Anyway, I'm not saying I couldn't see why my buddy, the bench champ, Wisconsin State bench champ, let him win by disqualification, by count out, but I got it, But I hung in there with him, and then here comes the finish. The Sheikh Hassan Husain, climbs to the top rope and hits me with a really snug crossbody. Crossbodies are the splash, the superfly leap, is supposed to be snug. If you can't handle a snug superfly leap or a snug splash from the top, you shouldn't be in the wrestling industry. But as long as they hit you in the safe spot, it sucks for a little while, but you're going to survive. The fans are entitled to that degree of reality. Well, he hit me, and when he went down and hooked my leg, the referee stood up, rang the bell, and they actually put me over by disqualification over Sheikh Hassan Husain. Now, at the time, I could feel it welling up. It was a shoot. Vern and Greg did not tell Sheikh Hassan Husain that coming off the top rope was a disqualification in the AWA at the time. The rib was on him, but even worse, the rib was on me. Because of the way I felt this situation out, I knew for him to save face as a legit Beirut champion, he was going to have to knock the ever-loving shit out of me. Luckily, I rolled outside the ring and under the announce table, and that's where I stayed. And Donna Gagne said to me as she was doing the timekeeping, I'll let you know when he leaves, hon. Okay, he's gone. You can leave now. So that was my experience with Sheikh Hassan Husain. At the end of the day, I was happy to get through the match, very grateful that even though I was green, I was smart enough to roll away and disappear where he couldn't see me.